السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الحدي حدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. ثم أما بعد. وعن النعمان بن بشير رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم مثل الجسد إذا اشتكى منه عضو تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى. It was narrated by Rahman bin Bashir, may Allah be pleased with them, that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that the believers in their mutual kindness, compassion, and sympathy are just like one body. When one of the limbs suffers, the whole body responds to it with wakefulness and fever. I decided to open with this hadith today because it directly correlates to the topic that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. When I decided that I was going to give this khutbah to you guys today, I started to think about considering I'm also somebody who was just like you so many years ago, who attended Valley Crescent when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years ago, a graduate of Valley Crescent. What could somebody that's been through high school, that's been through the college experience, who's still in college right now, come back to Valley Crescent 10 plus years later and give to you guys? So I started to think about all the things that Valley Crescent has taught me, and I started to think, looking back at it now, what would I have wanted to hear if I was back in your shoes and somebody who was in high school or in college came back to talk to me about? What would I want to hear? And the conclusion that I came to was something very, very simple, and it wasn't a complicated topic. I wanted to first emphasize the idea of the importance of brotherhood, empathy and compassion, and forgiving one another in Islam. And most importantly, I want to focus on the topic of what? Of empathy. Now, a lot of us have heard empathy growing up. We've heard the word empathy, and we don't exactly know what it means. So before I start going into the topic of empathy, because that's what I'm going to be talking to you guys about today, I want to give a clear definition on what exactly empathy is, right? So let's think about the word empathy, because it's something very important, and it's something that the Prophet ﷺ, it's a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it's something that's emphasized in our deen, and it's something that we should practice on a day-to-day basis. So what is empathy? When you hear empathy, you think of the word sympathy, right? It kind of sounds like sympathy. But is it sympathy? Not exactly. Although both are good things, empathy and sympathy are slightly different, and I'm going to explain to you guys how they're slightly different. So the definition of sympathy is a shared feeling, usually of sorrow, pity, or compassion for another person. You show concern for another person when you feel sympathy for them. So sympathy is, for example, let's say sympathy is you're out in the playground with your friend, you're playing basketball, you're playing soccer, and somebody gets hurt. You share a feel of, you feel sorry for them, you share a sense of like, you feel bad for them that they broke their arm, they broke the leg, so you feel sympathy towards them. But empathy is different, because empathy is not just acknowledging how they feel, empathy is actually a stronger emotion than sympathy. Empathy is not only sharing the ability to feel what that person feels, but it's the ability to put yourself in the place of another person and understand how someone else is feeling. So essentially it's taking yourself out of your own shoes and putting yourself in the shoes of another person. So an example I can give of this is, suppose you have a buddy, right, your best friend, a close friend of yours. But you're a single child and your friend has a brother, your friend has a sibling, some sort of sibling. Your friend's sibling one day gets really sick and ends up in the hospital. What you feel for your friend is sympathy, because you feel bad for your friend. You feel bad that your friend's sibling is hurt. But now let's pretend that you have a sibling yourself, and the scenario changes. And now your friend, the same scenario happens, your friend's sibling gets hurt. Now it's stronger, now it's deeper, now you're able to put yourself in the shoes of this kid. So now you don't feel sympathy anymore, you feel empathy. And empathy is a stronger emotion, and because it's a stronger emotion, it's harder to practice. So the main reason, I chose empathy for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to give you the main reasons as to why I chose empathy. The first reason is that we live in a time now, we live in a generation where I've noticed it's a generation of social media, it's a generation of online gaming, it's a generation of people are becoming sort of, in a sense, desensitized to human emotions that we're told by the Sunnah and our religion tells us to practice. And empathy is one of those things that I feel is getting lost along the way. And I know that, a lot of times, I'm guilty of this too, is when I was your guys' age and I would come to Valley Crest and say, you spend so much time around each other, right? You see the same faces every day. You spend hours in the classroom together, and then out of the classroom, if you guys play sports, you play sports together. That naturally, over time, you guys will come to some sort of disagreement, you and your friend, right? And if this disagreement isn't resolved in the early stages of it, what tends to happen is that over time it starts to build and it starts to add on. And then the next day you come and you see your friend, and I remember doing this myself, and I'll think to myself, tomorrow when I go see my friend at school, I'm not going to look in his direction, or I'm not going to speak. And then you start to lose that sense of empathy and that sense of brotherhood. So the whole purpose of me being here today is to show you how insignificant what problems, and this could go for the adults too, how insignificant the problems you have between each other is, and how important it is to let it go, and how important it is, and I'm going to give you examples of how important it is in the Quran and the Sunnah, and how the Prophet ﷺ practiced empathy, and he told us that empathy was one of the most important traits that we should have as Muslims, and we should always, before judging, before saying anything, put ourselves in the shoes of another Muslim. And then the last reason is that you guys are young, right? You guys are all still young, and I'm talking now mainly to the 7th and 8th graders, the kids who are eventually going to leave Valley Crescent, because all of us aren't going to be here forever. Eventually you go on to your high schools, and you go on to Cannon High School and Clovis North and wherever it is that you may go. And what you guys need to realize is that, and I can tell you this from personal experience, is that when you go to these high schools, the first thing that people recognize about you is that you're a Muslim. Especially since Islam is something that's it's a hot topic today, and it's talked about a lot. So with our names, with our features, we fit the criteria of somebody that's a Muslim. And so the first thing that people notice about you is that you're a Muslim. And with that being said, if you guys at this young age can practice such a strong emotion, right? Because practicing is a fundamental basis of life. If you want to be good at anything, if you want to be good at reading Quran or Tajweed, or if you want to improve at basketball, there's no secret, you just practice it. The same thing goes with empathy. Empathy is something that needs to be practiced, and it's a human emotion, and sometimes it isn't so easy to reach, especially when it's towards people we may feel ill of, or people that we don't know, right? It's easier to do it when it's people we know. But when it's people we don't know, it's kind of harder to put yourself in that shoe. So when you're young, and if you can practice and if you can master it, it'll be easier to conquer other emotions. So when you go into high school, right? If you go into high school and you become this representation of Islam, right? And people look at you and suppose you're Ahmed or you're Abdullah or you're Umar. And then, I know this is thinking far ahead, but then you graduate high school, right? And people think of you and they remember you. How do you think they'll remember you? Even when you graduate here, 7th and 8th graders, how do you think people remember you after you leave? When they think of, oh, that one guy, Omar, right? Are they going to think of, oh, he was the best basketball player? Which is important. Was he the best Quran reader? Was he the smartest student in the class? Which are all obviously important things. But one of the most important things that you need to be remembered is that guy was a guy who was a kind guy. That guy was a guy who followed the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That guy was a guy who he showed empathy and he always put himself in the shoes of other people. And this will even go a long way for when you make relationships with non-Muslim friends, right? Because then when you guys graduate and you can part ways and they look back at you and they think, man, that guy Umar, he was such a good guy. Like he had empathy, he always put himself in the shoes of other people, and then they correlate that to Islam, and he was a Muslim, right? That guy was such a good guy, and he was a Muslim, and you don't know how far this can go. You don't know that maybe down the road this person might even consider the religion of Islam because he just met you, and you don't even know that. And that's thinking ahead, but this is the main reason why I want to talk to you guys about empathy. So I can stand here in front of you guys and talk about my opinion on empathy or give you scenarios on empathy, but what I really want to do is correlate that to Islam and the Quran and the Hadith and show you how important it is. So first question I want to ask is empathy encouraged in Islam? Of course, absolutely it is encouraged in Islam, and it's something that the Prophet ﷺ himself encouraged with his Hadith and with his actions and stories himself. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ loved empathy so much to the point where he had multiple hadith, but I picked up one hadith where I wanted to talk to you guys about when the Prophet ﷺ talked about empathy. And it's a hadith that we hear a lot growing up, but it's a hadith that I feel we should pay more attention to. عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. So it was narrated on the authority of Abu Hamza Anas ibn Malik, the servant of the Messenger of Allah, peace blessing of Allah be upon him, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, who said, none of you truly believe until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Now this is a hadith that I'm sure many of you heard personally. It's a hadith I heard growing up a lot. And we know just by hearing it that it is a beautiful hadith and it's something that we should think about. But I want you guys to actually think about what is the Rasul saying to us in this hadith, right? He's emphasizing, in a way, he's emphasizing empathy, right? That he's saying that it's so important that none of us truly believe, right? None of us are truly believers until you want for your classmate or your sister or your brother, not just blood brother, but brothers in Islam, sisters in Islam, until you want for them what you want for yourself, right? So how many of us can actually truly say this about ourselves, right? And I'm speaking to myself as well, is that you guys sit in these classrooms and you guys compete for who's going to get the better grade on the exam, or who's going to do better than who. And at the end of the day, you want to do good, but does that mean deep down you want your brother to do bad in the exam? No, we never want another Muslim. We always want the best for other Muslims, because that's what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us in this hadith, and he's even going as far as to say that if we don't want this, then none of us truly believe. So this is something that the Prophet ﷺ highly, really wanted us to do. On top of that, we've heard that, actions, right? We've all been saying that actions speak louder than words, right? So Rasulullah had a lot of times where he gave a hadith about this, but he also displayed it in his actions, right? He not only said that we should act this way, but he displayed it in his actions, and he always displayed putting empathy and putting himself in another person's shoes on a day-to-day basis. He was the model of a person who displayed empathy and practiced empathy on a day-to-day basis. So with that being said, I want to share with you guys two little stories on when the Prophet ﷺ showed empathy. And keep in mind that when it came to showing empathy, the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't show empathy just to people who were close to him, his family members, regardless of who they were, regardless of their age, regardless of if they were Muslim or not, regardless if they were enemies of Islam or not. At the end of the day, he showed empathy to whoever it may be. And I think that speaks for itself, is that if the Prophet ﷺ could show empathy to people who at the time were considered enemies, we can show empathy to each other. We're classmates. At the end of the day, we're brothers. None of us are enemies of Islam. So I'm going to give you guys a quick story about the Prophet ﷺ and his grandson Hussein. The Prophet had two grandsons, Hassan and Hussein. The older one being Hassan and the younger one Hussein. He was known to love his grandsons dearly. He loved these grandsons dearly. Keep in mind that Hussein, the younger one, had a impediment in his speech, so he couldn't speak properly to the point where he would stutter. Right? The little Hussein, he was a little boy just like you guys, and he would stutter in his speech. And the stutter was so bad that sometimes he couldn't complete full sentences. Right? It was a really hard stutter. So the story is that the Prophet ﷺ, he was sitting with his companions, and they were sitting in a group, and they were talking amongst each other. And they were engaging in some sort of conversation, and Hussein wanted to get in this conversation, right? And he was curious as to what was happening. And out of love for the Prophet ﷺ, he started to conversate, right? And he wanted to give his opinion. Now pay attention to as soon as little Hussein started to speak, what did the Prophet ﷺ do? Pay attention to these little details, because this is what really matters at the end of the day. First, when Hussein started to speak, the Prophet went quiet. So when he went quiet, the rest of the room went quiet, and he gave his full attention to Hussein. He looked at Hussein with his eyes, but not only did he look at him with his eyes, he turned his face to Hussein. And not only did he turn his face to Hussein, he turned his chest to Hussein. And he gave Hussein his full, undivided attention. And so Hussein, started to speak and say whatever he wanted to say. As he started to speak, the room started to become slightly awkward, right? Because Hussein couldn't get through a word because of this stutter. His sentences weren't complete. So Hussein was trying, and people naturally, not in a mean way or a malicious way or an evil way, but they started to feel awkward, right? Because imagine being in a situation where somebody's trying to speak, everybody's listening to them, but the person can't speak, right? So they started to feel awkward, so they started to share stares. Naturally, they glanced at each other, right, out of awkwardness. And the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, were curious as to how was the Prophet reacting to all of this. So the companions looked at the Prophet's face, and they said that he had a big smile on his face, right? He was happy to listen to Hussein, right? And he listened to Hussein, and he didn't interrupt him, he didn't help him finish, he just let Hussein. Even if Hussein was going to take 5 more minutes to speak, it looked as if he would have listened. He let Hussein finish, and once Hussein finished, he looked at the room and he noticed that there was a bit of awkwardness, right? Something's going on, and he smiled. And what he told everybody was, لَقَدْ وَرَثَهَا عَنْ عَمِّهِ Musa. Right? He smiled and he said that he gained his strength from his uncle Musa. Right? He's talking in reference to Musa alayhi salam, who was known also to have a speech impediment. And he told the companions, do not feel bad for Hussein. Right? Don't feel bad for him. You guys should envy him because he shares an attribute and a quality of one of the greatest men to walk this earth, the Prophet of Allah himself. He shares that attribute with him, so don't feel bad for him. You guys should envy him. And look what the Prophet ﷺ, look what he did in this scenario. Right? He saw this kid and he knew that this kid could feel insecure about his stutter. And on top of that, Hussein's older brother was Hassan, who was very eloquent in his speech, and he knew how to speak properly. So that probably added to the insecurities of Hussein. So the Prophet, what did he do? He took himself out of his shoes and he put himself in the shoes of this boy. And he thought, what exactly did this boy need right now so he wouldn't feel any more insecure if he already does feel insecure? And he told him that he related him to Musa, and he termed something that could be potentially negative right? This could be potentially negative and positive into something negative to turn into positive, right? So given this story, right, it's such a practical story. It's something that could happen every day in our classroom, right? I can give you an example of you're in the classroom, and what I remember that the teachers would pick out a certain student, right, to read a sect off a book, whether it's in Arabic, whether it's in English, right? And sometimes that student, his strong suit may not be reading. He may not be the best reader, right? We all have our strengths and weaknesses. So this student may not be a great reader. And say the student starts to struggle and the whole class is listening to the student. Given the story that I just told you, right, about how the Prophet treated Hussein, what would we do, right? As Muslims, what would the Prophet ﷺ do? How would you feel? We wouldn't laugh, right? We wouldn't smirk, we wouldn't make noises, right? We would say nothing, we would let the teacher handle it. And if the student needed words of encouragement, after you give him those words of encouragement, right? Because you have to put yourself in the shoes of that kid, right? If you weren't good at reading, and the teacher asked you to read, and the whole class was listening, you would feel a little insecure. And then on top of that, people were laughing. How do you think that would make you feel? And that's the way that the Prophet ﷺ, that's the way he thought. He always thought about the person that he was interacting with before he thought about himself. Now I know a lot of people can say that, saying somebody so loved to the Prophet ﷺ. And it's easy to show empathy, which is true, right? He loves the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet loves him. But how about people that the Prophet didn't know? How about people who at the time were considered enemies to Islam? How about people at the time who hurt and tortured and even to a certain extent they killed Muslims, right? You've all heard about a man named Abu Jahl. If you haven't heard of the man named Abu Jahl was the man who declared war on the Prophet, he declared war on Islam, and he declared war against Muslims. Abu Jahl was a person who had so much hatred towards Islam and towards the Prophet ﷺ to the point where he partook in things like torturing. He tortured Muslims, or even to a certain extent, he would kill Muslims just for the single fact or the single thing that they believed in Islam, right? He didn't like Muslims that much. Abu Jahl even led his army into war in hopes of one day eventually killing the Prophet ﷺ and as many Muslims as possible, and he had his own plots to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ. So he made it very clear, right? And the Prophet knew that he didn't like me, he didn't like my religion, and he didn't like anything that had to do with me. Abu Jahl had a son that went by the name of Ikrimah. So Ikrimah was also like his dad and believed in all the same ideologies as the Prophet as his father Abu Jahl agreed on. So over time, Abu Jahl eventually passed away, and Ikrimah carried on the works of his dad. But 9 years after the Hijrah, when the Prophet ﷺ, when he came back to Mecca, Ikrimah was one of the people in Mecca. And he knew how evil and vile he was towards Muslims, right? That he knew that when the Prophet came back and he conquered Mecca, he left. He left Mecca out of fear that they're going to capture me, right? And he knows that he was an evil person, so he left. When he left, his wife stayed behind. The wife of Ikrimah stayed behind. And when the wife of Ikrimah stayed behind, she went to the Prophet ﷺ, and she was one of the many women who accepted Islam. So she became a Muslim, right? And after she became a Muslim, she told the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, my husband Ikrimah fled Mecca. He fled Mecca out of fear of you capturing him. Can you please pardon him? Now think about this. Now think about the Prophet ﷺ knows that Ikrimah is the son of Abu Jahl. The Prophet ﷺ knows that Abu Jahl is somebody who was harsh, and he knows that Ikrimah was also somebody that was harsh to Muslims. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do? He said, okay. And he forgave him. She went back, she got Ikrimah, she brought Ikrimah, and Ikrimah eventually he became Muslim, right? And the Prophet put himself in the shoes of Ikrimah, right? So I've explained to you guys how important it is to show empathy, but I just want to share one verse before I end my first portion of the khutbah on how Allah feels about people who don't show empathy, and also one hadith on how the Prophet ﷺ talks about people who are rude and who hurt the feelings of other people. So Allah says in Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 58, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بِغَيْرِ مَا اكْتَسَبُوا فَقَدِ احْتَمَلُوا بُهْتَانًا وَإِثْمًا مُبِينًا. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's saying in this verse, and those who harm believing men and believing women for something other than they have earned, have certainly borne upon themselves slander and a manifest sin. So Allah is making it clear that that if you hurt the feeling of your friend, your brother, you're doing a clear sin. And in another narration by Abu Hurairah, he reported that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ يَنْزِلُ بِهَا فِي النَّارِ أَبْعَدَ مَا بَيْنَ الْمُشْرِكِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Right, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that verily the servant may speak a single word for which he plummets into the hellfire further than the distance between the east and the west. So the Prophet is saying that a single word, just one rude thing you can say to your friend, to your brother, can earn you a spot in Jahannam so big as far as east and west, right? So I want to end the first half of my khutbah on that. And I want you guys to think about how severe it is to say something rude to a friend, and you should take it seriously, because at the end of the day, it could earn us a spot in Jahannam. وَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ. Alhamdulillah alladhi wassalawatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So, before I cap off the khutbah, I just want to make sure that I got my point to you guys across. You know, I talked about that hadith where the Prophet mentions the believing men and women in their kindness and compassion are like one body, right? And I talked about the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ emphasized compassion and empathy so much to the point where he said that none of us truly believe until we want for our brothers what we want for ourselves, right? So I hope that by showing you guys that how important it is and how actually severe it can be too, that showing empathy is a big deal, and showing empathy at the end of the day can go a longer way than you guys think. So if any of you guys, you know, I know I used to have this feeling, you guys had a problem with somebody before this khutbah, hopefully after, when you go and talk to your classmates, you can say, you know, that khutbah we heard of that guy Adam that gave that khutbah, he said it's not worth it, and the Prophet ﷺ said it's not worth it, and at the end of the day it's so insignificant, and you can question that regardless of who's right or wrong. Before I sit down, I want to share one last story about empathy and how empathy is displayed in Islam. And this story comes from a man who is very close to the heart of the Prophet ﷺ. This person was a man who lived in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was a Sahabi of the Prophet ﷺ. This man was a man who was so beloved to the Prophet ﷺ, and he went by the name of Abu Dahdah. Abu Dahdah was not one of the prominent Sahabas that we hear every day, like Umar, Abu Bakr, Ali, Rahman. He's not one of them, but he's somebody that was so dear to the heart of the Prophet ﷺ. And we all know that when this Abu Dahdah died in the battle of Uhud, and we know that when you die in a battle, we know that we are considered shaheed, right? We know that we are guaranteed a spot in Jannah. And this noble honor that he had of being a shaheed isn't the main reason that a lot of shuyukh across the world bring this man up. The main reason is something he did 6 months prior to his passing away. So to tell you this story, I have to tell you about an orphan boy 6 months prior to when Abu Dahdah passed away. There was an orphan boy who had recently just lost his father. This orphan boy was sad that he lost his father, but his father left for him a meadow. A meadow is like a grass field and a property that he had, and he had animals, and he had a farm on that meadow. This orphan boy was trying to protect his meadow, so he would build a wall on the property line of his meadow so that he can protect his animals and protect all his flock. But while he was building this wall, a tree got in the way. And that tree was the tree of his neighbors, which was on the property line. So he needed to get rid of that tree because that tree would make his wall weak. So what did this boy do? This orphan boy went to his neighbor, and he told his neighbor, "Can you give me this tree? Right? Can you give it to me for charity? Because I need to build my wall." The neighbor said, "La, I can't." He said, "Can you sell me this tree?" He said, "You have so many trees. This one tree, you lose, it won't hurt you." He said, "La, I can't sell you this tree." This boy had no father to speak for him. He was an orphan. He just lost his father. And so he became very sad, very teary-eyed. So what did he do? He went and he said, "I'm going to take this to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So he went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he told the Prophet, "Ya Rasulullah," and he told him the story of what was happening, and I can't get this tree. So the Prophet displayed again empathy. He knows what it's like to be an orphan, right? The Prophet was an orphan. He lost his parents at a young age. So what did the Prophet say? He said, "Okay, call this man." So they called the man, and the man came, and the man, when he saw the boy and he saw the Prophet, became furious and he became angry, and he said, why are you bringing this up to the Prophet ﷺ? Right? This doesn't need to be brought to the Prophet. And the Prophet, on the behalf of the boy, because the boy has no father, and out of the empathy of the Prophet, he asked this man, can you give this boy your tree? And the man said, La, ya Rasulullah, right? It is not because the man didn't want to give him this tree. But while this whole interaction was happening, who was listening? Abu Dahdah was sitting there in the same masjid, and he was listening to all of this take place. And out of the empathy of Abu Dahdah for a boy that he's never even met, he doesn't know this orphan, he got up and he followed the neighbor outside of the masjid. And he went to the neighbor and he told the neighbor that one tree of yours, right? He told the neighbor first, do you know who I am? Abu Dahdah asked the neighbor. And the neighbor said, yes, you're Abu Dahdah. You own one of the biggest palm tree, the date tree garden in the city. Abu Dahdah was known to own over 300, 400 dates, and he had so much wealth from those dates. And he said, yes, you're Abu Dahdah, you have 300, 400 date trees. So then Abu Dahdah told him, he said, give me that one tree that you were going to give, that you didn't want to give to that orphan boy, and I'll give you my whole garden of date trees. And this man, to a certain degree, thought Abu Dahdah was making fun of him. He couldn't believe he was offering him such a good offer. Abu Dahdah said, I'm giving you a real offer. The man, who would decline something like that? The man took it right away, and Abu Dahdah went back to the masjid where the Prophet and the boy was, and he told the orphan boy, oh orphan boy, the tree is yours. And then he asked the Prophet ﷺ, do I have the same reward that you offered him? And the Prophet ﷺ smiled and said, yes, that you do have the same reward. And this left an impact on the Prophet ﷺ, right? The Prophet saw this and it made him proud, right? And this empathy that he had left an impact on the Prophet. So then Abu Dahdah went home and he called to his wife from inside the house and he said, Ya Ummi Dahdah, come outside. She said, why Abu Dahdah? And he said, this no longer belongs to us. And she said, who does it belong to? And he said, I sold it to Allah and the Rasul ﷺ. And instead of her saying, what have you done? You sold all our wealth. Are you crazy? What did you do? She said, what a successful transaction. She was happy that he gave away all their wealth. So she came out, she brought the kids out, and they left with, they had a garden, and they left with absolutely nothing. And then 6 months later, in the Battle of Uhud, after the battle was done, the Prophet ﷺ was looking for the bodies and collecting all the bodies of all the Muslims and all the shaheeds that had died. And he was looking for one specific Sahaba. And who was he looking for? Abu Dahdah. And why was he looking for Abu Dahdah? Because of the empathy that Abu Dahdah showed to that little boy resonated with the Prophet ﷺ. And it was such a deep emotion that the Prophet ﷺ still remembered this little thing that Abu Dahdah did for this boy. And he remembers how this man put himself in the shoes of this little boy. And he found the body of Abu Dahdah laying there, dead, lifeless. And he kneeled over the body of Abu Dahdah and he said, oh Abu Dahdah, now how many palm trees or date trees will you have in Jannah? Now how many date trees will you have in Jannah? So at the end of the day, what the point I'm trying to get to you guys across is that at the end of the day, right, we all are going to leave this, you're going to leave this school, you're going to leave other Christians, you're going to start your life, you're going to have other relationships. The most important thing that you guys as Muslims should be remembered as is by your empathy. Is that when people think back about you, they should know that you are a good guy. And for those kids who still have 2-3 months left, it's not too late. Create good relationships. Always be a person who people look at and think of as a good person. And then people will correlate that to Islam, and you don't have to essentially give da'wah through words because your actions are your da'wah. And people will start to think about Islam just because you're a representation of Islam. And I'm going to close with that. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك يا مولانا سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا وتقبل دعاءنا واغفر ذنوبنا اللهم اهد شباب المسلمين اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى ومن العمل ما ترضى اللهم ارحمنا فإنك بنا راحم ولا تعذبنا فأنت علينا قادر والطف بنا يا مولانا فيما جرت به المقادير إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وأقم الصلاة
your wife